The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Tina Nowakowski from the Imparts office. I want to thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping things. All attendees are on listen-only mode, so they will not be able to speak during the webinar, but we do encourage you to participate by using the chat box and the questions box, and we'll monitor that throughout. If you have any specific questions, we will try to address them all, but I know that Lisa has a lot of information that she wants to jam into this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Chair, Lisa Bryant.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for sharing your time with us. As she said, my name is Lisa Bryant. I am the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Chair for Imparts, and I thank you. Today, I would also like to thank Imparts. I would like to thank Clay Summers, Jennifer Provenzano, and Tina, of course, for helping coordinate all this. And let's not forget to thank the panel. The panel is very instrumental in what's going to happen today and very knowledgeable, and they will be happy to answer additional questions. Before we get started today, though, I want to do a couple of housekeeping. If you've ever attended a meeting or a session that I have facilitated, you already know that one, I'm going to keep it light, I'm going to keep it truthful, and we're going to have a good time and learn together. So my first rule is, please listen and hear what everyone is saying. Listening and hearing are two different things, people. So please remember to listen and hear. Take in these words, because what's going to be said today are going to be nuggets of knowledge and realism that you might not get anywhere else on another webinar anytime soon. I almost can guarantee you that today. And also, please realize that it is okay to disagree with views that are given to you by not only myself, but the panel as well. In order to grow, we must accept being uncomfortable. So today, you will probably laugh. At times you may cry. At times you may even get angry, but that's okay, because my objective is to inform you and hopefully facilitate a shift, which is what this whole seminar is about. There's a shift in the atmosphere right now. There's a shift in how we live, how we talk, how we walk, how we interact with one another. So please ask questions, make statements. This is a judge-free zone, and I nor the panel will have all the answers, but we promise to be open, honest, truthful, and we pledge today to embrace the shift. So you may ask, why did I choose, is there a shift in the atmosphere? Because with so much going on with the pandemic, with George Floyd, with just police brutality, and just overall Black Lives Matter. All of these things stir emotions and reactions from everyone. So I chose that word because a lot of times when you say shift, it's more accepted and you're more inclined to inquire. But when you say change, people are resistant. Don't resist the change. There is a shift in the atmosphere. Whether or not you're going to be a part of the shift is up to you. So with that, I would like to, as I normally do, because I'm Parks and Rec and I'm a Parks and Rec professional, I want everyone, I can't see you, but to hold up 10 fingers in front of the screen. Hold up both your hands. And what we're going to do is, we're going to put one finger down for every question that pertains to you. This is not going to be an easy 10, 12 questions, people. So please be open and honest. Put a finger down if you've ever been called a racial slur. Put a finger down if you have been followed in a store unnecessarily. Put a finger down if someone has crossed the street to avoid on the sidewalk. Put a finger down if you've had someone clutch their purse in an elevator with you. Put a finger down if you've had someone step off an elevator to keep from riding with you. Put a finger down if you've been shopping in an upscale establishment and been accused of not being able to afford a purchase. Put a finger down if you've had fear in your heart when being stopped by the police. Put a finger down if you have never been given a pass on a citation that you deserve. Put a finger down if you've been stopped or detained by the police for no valid reason. Put a finger down if you've been denied service because of your race. Put a finger down if you've had to teach your child how not to be killed by the police. Each panelist, how many fingers do you have up? Please put it in front of the screen. Christine, you have 3. Stacy, you have 5. Freda has 4. Lakita has 3. Lorena has 6. And Glenn has 1. I have none. Each one of those things has happened to me. Each one of those things has touched one of our panelists. How many fingers do you have up? All right, now we're going to introduce our panelists if you haven't seen. Christine, along with her husband, Charles, who also owns his own law firm, will be popping in and out and able to answer some questions. Christine Longstreet. She's also a lawyer as well, and she'll give a little bit about herself soon. We have Stacey Thomas here. We also have Freda Sampson, Glenn Mcintosh, Lorena Wheeler, and Lakita Frazier Watson. Ms. Watson, would you please give us a few words about yourself, and of course, let us know about EMS.
Thank you. My name is Lakita Frazier Watson. I am the executive director for the Richland County Recreation Commission. I'm located in Columbia, South Carolina. I was born and raised in Virginia, however, so I've only been here about 2 years. I currently serve as the president for the National Recreation and Parks Ethnic Minority Society, which was founded and then incorporated in 1971 in support of minorities in the field of parks and recreation to address those issues, as well as concerns that impact not only professionals in our field that are minorities, but communities that serve minorities as well for parks and recreation.
All right, thank you, Lakita. All righty, Ms. Freda Sampson, could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon to everyone. I am Freda Sampson, and I am a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategist and consultant for Michigan Roundtable for Diversity and Inclusion. I am not a lifelong resident of Detroit, but Detroit is my home as I was born in Louisville, Kentucky. You may not detect the accent at the moment, but it might seep out before the day is out. And I am an entrepreneur and have been inside the city of Detroit for over 25 years, owning coffee houses, running my own consulting firm, publishing company. And I am passionate and committed to this work, to the conversation that we're having today, and to how we proceed towards a space where there is greater equity, greater voice, and greater justice.
All right, thank you. Stacey Thomas, can you please introduce yourself? Wait a minute, Stacey, we can't hear you. Start over.
Am I muted?
You're good now.
I'm good now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Like I said, thanks, Lisa. My name is Stacey Thomas, born and raised from Flint, Michigan. I'm a former WNBA player, been in the league for 6 years. I actually have a championship with the Detroit Shock, if a lot of you remember the Detroit Shock right here in Detroit. Hall of Famer at the University of Michigan. I'm an entrepreneur as well. I'm a business owner of Full Court 11 Enterprises, which is a business that provides sports officials and referees and instructors for youth recreational programs. We supply certified sports officials and instructors to officiate games and facilitate youth programs around the city and the community.
All right, thank you, Stacy. Can I have Christine Longstreet? Can you introduce yourself, please? And give us a little bit about Charles, too, while he's busy.
Oh, okay. All right. So my name is Christine Longstreet. I am a supervisor at a national public defense firm, and I am primarily a trial attorney. And I work to ensure that people of limited means get the best legal representation that we can provide. We practice with a holistic model. We have on staff social workers, client advocates, and investigators. I'm married to a lawyer who is in private practice, and he does principally criminal, federal, and more high-profile cases. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Christine. Next up is Glenn Mcintosh. Please introduce yourself, sir.
Well, good afternoon. As Lisa mentioned, my name is Glenn Mcintosh, and actually born and raised in Detroit. Very active in the community, church, and sports. So I can relate to Stacy, and went away to college to play football. Got into bodybuilding and ended up being Mr. Michigan, Mr. USA. Mention those things because discipline and structure are key when we talk about creating transformation and change. Currently, I serve as the Senior Vice President for Student Affairs as well as the Chief Diversity Officer at Oakland University, which is located in Rochester, Michigan, about 30 miles north of the city of Detroit. I'm very active in the community. I co-chair the Oakland University City of Pontiac initiative along with Mayor Deidre Waterman. And so I've been in higher ed now for about 37 years in various capacities. But my primary passion has always been around diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And I came to Oakland University to start a minority affairs office, and that's morphed into more than that, a gender and sexuality center, disability support services, veteran support services. And so my thing is, if you want change, you gotta be willing to rock the boat, find the resources that make things happen. I don't believe you can foster change unless you have resources. Rhetoric is great, sounds good, but you gotta have resources and mobilize people to create change. So thanks for having me today. I'm honored.
All right, thank you, everyone. So let's jump into the good stuff and get some questions out. One of the questions, oh, how can I forget? Everyone, please forgive me. Lorena Wheeler is also my director, and I am in hot water now. Please, Lorena Wheeler, please introduce yourself.
So again, my name is Lorena Wheeler. I'm the director of Ferndale Parks and Recreation Department. I've been with Ferndale for over 3 years now. Ferndale is a city where we pride ourselves on being diverse and in equality and inclusion, and I'm proud to be with this city as well. And prior to Ferndale, I was with the city of Detroit 15 years as an environmental specialist. I'm also an entrepreneur and been in sports and Parks and Rec my whole life as well. I mentioned Detroit because I've been in several leadership positions where I was a minority, not only African American, but woman as well. So I'm just proud to be here. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to the discussion.
All right, thank you. And please forget that I left you out. All right, everyone, let's get to the nitty gritty here. Today I'll be facilitating. So I have a few questions that I'm going to be posing to the panel, as well as if you have some questions that you would like to pose, please don't forget to put them in the chat and they will get them to me as soon as possible so that we can ask those as well. One of the first questions I wanted to touch on was in the state of Michigan. Lakita, you might not be familiar with this for the state of Michigan, but our governor, Governor Whitmer, has done a proclamation celebrating Juneteenth. When you heard this proclamation, what did you feel about the proclamation and about her recognizing Juneteenth. Freda, can I get your words on that?
Thank you for the question, Lisa. So I had an opportunity to take a little bit of it in, and let me say that I think Governor Whitmer has done an excellent job in terms of trying to keep those of us who are residents in this state as safe as possible. I think in the process of her really trying to be available to all of the residents of the city and in the state, she has perhaps either revealed her deeper capacity to connect with many of us than some of us may have thought. And so her proclamation to acknowledge and to celebrate Juneteenth, I think is important. I appreciate and value and expect, quite frankly, that that's exactly what she would do, because this celebration of sort is a significant moment in American history. And it is not one that should be taken lightly. It is one that reveals the breadth and depth of what our American experience is, particularly Black people, enslaved Black people. So 1865 is an important date. June 19th is an important date, and her ability to acknowledge and to speak to it, I think is both relevant, timely, and appropriate. And I appreciate that she did create that proclamation.
Lakita, has Juneteenth been recognized in your state as well, in South Carolina?
Not at this point. One of the first things that I learned when I came here for my interview, we have Confederate Memorial Day. So that happens every year here. And I'm not knowing any better. I said, we're gonna move around some of the holidays. And I went to go take that one off, and I was like, whoa. So I'm in a red state. I'll be very honest with you, but Virginia, my home state, yesterday, I did acknowledge Juneteenth, and it will be celebrated as a holiday in that state. I totally agree with what Ms. Sampson said. I think that it's something that was left out of the history books when I was in school, something that I didn't know. And to now be able to bring this history to the forefront, because a lot of young people are so detached. They feel like, well, slavery happened 700 years ago. Segregation was 300. And so a lot of young people don't realize how new some of our rights are. So I think that Juneteenth and acknowledging it is very important.
Thank you. Thank you. For those that aren't aware of what Juneteenth was, don't feel ashamed, because up until I would say I was a few years ago, I actually was not educated on Juneteenth. It was not something that was taught in school. And actually, it wasn't something that was celebrated in my family. So I did take the gumption to educate myself on Juneteenth, which is the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States. Many people believe slavery ended with Lincoln and everything, but it did not. June 19th, 1865 is a big day for the independence of Black people. Glenn, did you want to say anything about Juneteenth?
Well, just to your question, I thought the governor got good counsel, because again, I'm sure that she was in the dark as to what Juneteenth is, like many people. So I thought there was evidence that she's receiving good counsel. As Lakita mentioned, a great part of the African experience in America is left out of history books. And so we come here as a people with a rich history, but certainly it's absent from the educational system. And so when we hear about Juneteenth, most African Americans, it's something that's new for them, as well as other people in our country. And so again, Juneteenth, if you're familiar with that, that moment was 6 months late. Slaves were freed 6 months prior to that, and the word didn't get down to Texas until 6 months later. There's resistance towards getting that message to the slaves so they would be free. And so while we celebrate Juneteenth, it's actually the wrong date that we should celebrate.
Thank you. Thank you. Going off of that question a little bit, looking at each of our professions, how can we better support professionals of color in our industry right now? Stacey, I'd like to start off with you. Stacey, you're muted.
Y'all saw unmute me, huh? For me, I think, patronizing and just supporting other businesses, lending your support to other businesses. Word of mouth is huge, just spreading the word about different businesses or whatnot. I believe that my business in itself has increased in everything, just, from networking with different people and just people's, saying great things about the business and my integrity and things like that. Finding ways to, partner and collaborate with one another. And even if, your business goes on a line, maybe offering, other advice or sending them, to other people or other businesses that they can collaborate and maybe, put things together. And then just sharing ideas and networking. If we, put all our hands in together, all our minds collectively, usually good things come from it, sharing, volunteering, just helping in any way that we can. I know when it comes to my business and just dealing with the people that are part of, my business, family, sharing, and just being committed and dedicated to the cause and what we're doing has helped tremendously.
Christine, what is your take on that in your industry?
So I think that at least in the legal profession, from the criminal defense side, it is sort of, you have to hope that people understand and appreciate, but I think people have been so desensitized because you see the same thing over and over again, right? And so in my circle, we talk about making sure people feel heard. I think that's the biggest way that you can support, and frankly, in any industry, because one of the things that happens is we've been saying it, right? We've been saying, like, this feels not right. This feels racist. This feels, bad. But finally, people are able to see it, right, and understand it. And maybe they felt some of what we felt when we, saw that video of George Floyd, right? So I think the most profound way that you can support anyone is just to make sure that they know that you hear them and that you understand their pain.
All right, Lorena, how do you think we can support professionals of color in our industry right now?
Yeah, especially in the parks and recreation field. I would say, one, creating a space where they can feel like they can express how they're feeling and what they're going through during this time. I think that's very important, especially as a leader with our staff, because this is a very crucial time. And even especially us going through a pandemic in itself and then having this movement on top of it. As far as progressing in our field, I think mentoring is very important at this time, to be able to instill in others what you know, and to help them grow. It's unfortunately when we are a minority in any field that we're working in, and I'm sure I'm probably speaking for everybody on this panel, we have to go 110%. It's never just 100%. We have to go above and beyond. And so I would say for those that we are mentoring and trying to train up and help them build a career, give them trainings, not only in the field, but to take them to the next level. So even if it's parks and recreation related, but it gives them another skill that may help them excel over another candidate that they would have otherwise been looked over because of their race. Let's try to teach them that. So not only are you learning how to get certified as a Parks and Recreation professional, you're also getting certified as a project manager, for instance, because I think that there is a shift right now, but we aren't oblivious to the fact that racism and biases still exist against Black people.
All right, Glenn, I would like to hear from your perspective out in academia. You know, what is it that we can do to support more people of color in your industry? Oh, you're muted. Tina, can you unmute Glenn?
Yeah. You can hear me now?
Yes.
I wrote an op-ed piece that appeared in the Detroit Free Press a couple of weeks ago, and it talked about systemic racism and biases. And I think one of the key things that our industry and others can do is really acknowledge that racism exists. And there's a term that I know Christine is probably more familiar with than me called plausible deniability. And what it does is it allows you to turn a deaf ear, blind eye to what's going on and say, I didn't know. And the George Floyd incident was a time when our country watched a man be murdered. And if you really understand the dynamics of what's going on there, it's kind of like the experience of the African American in America, that you saw the establishment with their knee on the throat of an African American and looking at the crowd who knew what was happening, that this man was checking out of life, but they would not cross that line for fear of what would happen to them. And a lot of people in all types of industry, including higher education, oftentimes feel powerless, you know, against the establishments, the systems that have existed so long. And so I think the support starts with acknowledging that there are systems in place that do lend themselves to discrimination and racism. And it prevents the transparency that we need to have in those difficult, courageous conversations. And so I think first it starts with acknowledging that every system has its biases, its processes, and its procedures that are inherently racist. So we have to have that courageous conversation. So, you know, Lisa, I'm grateful that we're having this dialogue today.
Thank you. I know, just to piggyback off of what everyone has just said, I've been sitting here reflecting on how often I've had to be that silent Black girl so that I'm not viewed as an angry Black woman. And I think that's the thing that upset me and brought out of me as this was beginning to unfold. When I was contacted by Clay and Imparts and everything about, you know, putting together something as the DEI committee chair, I went back and thought, and a lot of feelings came up. I actually took a day off of work after I saw the George Floyd video, because it touched me that much that when I saw that, it took me all the way back from my Detroiters to Malice Green. Malice Green was murdered on Warren near 25th. How do I know? Because that was my neighborhood. I was in college when it happened, but I was home when the trial happened. And the trial happened literally 25 years ago this month, when those officers were sent to trial. And Detroit rioted yet again. And the same things that are happening now happened 25 years ago. And to revisit those feelings opened up wounds that I realized that I had not realized were still there. That these same things that are happening now, the same things that we are saying now, were still prevalent then. They are still happening, and they're repeating themselves. And as they repeat themselves, they're getting bigger, the wounds are getting deeper, and the reactions are intensifying. So yes, there is a shift, but are we shifting in the right direction? How many of you ladies, show of hands, have felt like you had to choke back some words because you didn't want to be viewed as that angry Black woman? Because that is the stigma that's been put on us. You know, when we speak up, when we're called aggressive. When we stand our ground as a strong Black man, you're viewed as someone to fear. Why is that? Those are the questions that I would like to, you know, get an answer to and send out to my constituents, and for them to internalize as well, and ask themselves why. Why are these things said? We're not all angry. Sometimes we're just passionate. Okay, we're gonna move off that subject a little bit and say for my park and rec professionals and professionals in general, what are some immediate ways that we think parks and rec departments can help foster healing and spaces that feel safe and inclusive for people of color? Who would like to take that one first? Don't everybody raise your hand at once. Okay, I'll throw it at Lorena. Lorena, please answer that one for me.
I would say one would be just to show up. I think that, you know, especially in our area, we are a minority as far as the workers and the staff in the Metro Detroit area outside of like Detroit. So I would say one, show up, continue to diversify in staffing so people are more comfortable when they come to a different events. I would say we had a great example in Flint where there was a rally going on, and instead of the police actually on the defensive side and ready to mace, they were actually joining the protest. And it was such a positive outcome, and it was, I think, just showed a lot on you know, put a positive light on everything that was going on. So I would say in the future we can continue to partner as well with our police and emergency responders to show the positive side of things and create more of a relationship with the community, as well as definitely, you know, having the support of the city as a whole, that like our city has voiced support in the movement and anti-racism.
Okay, I would like to hear that from Lakita as well.
Well, something that I was proud of that I was able to do in my previous position was to create an office on youth. I think that is important, where we can start with our young people and dealing with some of the issues that they have. That is the beginning of some good dialogue. I love what Mr. Mcintosh said earlier. I was sitting here and I made some notes, and he said, you know, change requires resources. And that was very powerful because we don't talk about it in those confines. So where I'm at and what I try to do, I'm in a little different position, where in Virginia I was about 50-50. When I came here to this agency, my agency is about 95% African American, male and female. So when you look at my leadership, it is 6 African American women. My CFO, my deputy, myself, my PIO. That's a blessing. That doesn't happen everywhere. But I'm very intentional about building my team, because your team needs to reflect what the community looks like. And how do you do that without being judgmental or discriminating? You have to be honest. So one of the things I recently did, I brought a couple of white people in. My staff almost passed out. Today, I'm just going to be honest with you. It was different because we're so used to being the minority, but here we're the majority. And so when I started recruiting these gentlemen, I got one from Arizona. I just kept it 100 with them. I said, son, you do know where you're coming. Have you looked at the demographics? Do you understand that you are going to help me shift culture? Do you understand that you are now going to be the minority? How are you going to work through that? So in a nutshell, I believe you have to be intentional. You have to be comfortable with being intentional and have that dialogue with your team, even when you're recruiting and with your citizens. And the last part of that, the baseball people used to give me hell. I brought this young man in. They don't say nothing in. So I'm just going to be honest with you. You got to call it for what it is and say, listen, I want to diversify, but how do you do it where individuals of color, here in my agency, we have a great opportunity, but how do you sustain that so that if I leave and my people leave, what's going to be the next shift? You got to have good succession plan, and like Ms. Wheeler said, create those connections and mentors.
Thank you, Lakita. That is a very different type of situation, especially in our industry of Parks and Rec. I know that I came in really green when I began to work with Ms. Wheeler, and we went to NRPA, and I went to my first NRPA conference a couple years ago, and we're walking around, and I didn't realize we were like unicorns there because she's a director and I'm the deputy director, and we're both Black females.
Yep.
We're unicorns in this industry, and I did not realize that, you know, the magnitude of what we were doing and where we were doing it at.
And then you put it in bigger terms, you have thousands of parks and recreation departments across the country. You have hundreds of directors, and you have less than 20 African-American women that are directors in the United States. So when does that shift occur? You know, but we're at the after school level. You know, we're at the front line. How do we continue this dialogue? So I'm going to stop talking right now because I'm sure someone else has something to say.
No, thank you. That was great. I believe that is a big issue in all of our industries going forward. I know especially in our sports industries. I know Stacy can speak to that in the front office area. Women are in general are beginning to, you know, assert themselves, and not only the WNBA level, but the NBA level. Stacy, could you speak on that, please?
Yeah, so like you said, from a different perspective, not necessarily coming from Parks and Recs, but as a referee myself on the collegiate level and aspiring, you know, to move up into the professional ranks, it's tough. Excuse me, being a Black, you know, minority female, you would think, you know, I'm on the women's side of collegiate basketball as an official, but you don't see very many of us. Actually, there's a lot of males or white females that dominate the Division I levels and higher. But as you can see, as more and more opportunities are presented for, you know, African Americans, minorities on the professional level, we're starting to make our mark. We're starting to, you know, get those opportunities and be able to perform and show, you know, showcase our abilities. And that's what it's all about, just being able to have that opportunity to get a chance, you know, to achieve our goals and to actually see others that are reflectives of ourselves in those positions, knowing or like having the idea that we have a possibility of making it. And the more, as you know, the more we see it as a young kid growing up, you know, I idolize, you know, different professional players or whatnot, but just seeing, you know, the Tina Thompsons, the Cheryl Swoops, you know, the Black African-American girls playing, you know, professionally, getting paid to do something that we love to do. You know, I'm looking up as a young kid, it's like, okay, I see they're doing it, maybe I'll have a chance to do it. And, you know, the more we're able to see that and implement that in the business world and professions, I think more people, you know, will strive, you know, to succeed.
All right, Freda, I would like to pose the question to you as well, not just in Parks and Rec, just in general. How can we help foster healing in spaces that feel safe and inclusive for people of color?
So I think you actually spoke to it in an important way at the very top of our time together, which is to listen and to hear. So from my perspective, it doesn't matter what the profession is, but one of the ways to be supportive, to have a meaningful impact on what is going on within the context of any particular experience, particularly of people of color, Black and brown individuals in particular, to listen and to be in a position where people are able to feel like they are being heard within the context of what it is that they do and how it is that they do it. Beyond that, it is, as Mr. Mcintosh has indicated, to be able to provide resources, to be able to be engaged on the scope of opportunities that exist within whatever the profession is. I, as a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategist, I go in and out of organizations, corporations, institutions all the time, talking about these issues of bias, to be able to become cognizant of your bias, both your conscious and unconscious bias, so that in this quest of learning to communicate with each other, we are more aware of our own space. So that also means to be self-reflective of what it is that we are doing, what it is that we're saying, how it is that we are being supportive, and just honestly to just be present, to listen, and to operate in a manner that's both respectful, but operate in a manner that is a manner of movement forward.
Thank you. All right. I would like to move on to another question here that I think is a very, very important one for all of our industries, and that is, do you recommend departments and organizations making public statements in response to the protests or issuing statements relating to solidarity or inclusion? First of all, I don't know how many of your departments or your constituents have made statements regarding, what's going on, and especially regarding Black Lives Matter and things like that. I just would like to hear, what do you recommend? Glenn, I'll start off with you.
That's a good question, because the George Floyd incident stirred a lot of emotions in people across our country, and it made people react in ways they never acted before. And so the corporate mindset is that we have to address this because our target audience is impacted by this. Every organization is a business with an audience, and so so many industries had to react. But the question is, is it measurable what you've been doing historically in your organization, your corporation, your company? If you don't have a track record for diversity, equity, and inclusion, you shouldn't be making those statements. And that's what you see a lot of. Right now is people jumping because they feel like I've got to make a statement to show that I'm on board. But again, I'm going to point to your company and ask you to show me the data. Show me your hiring history, your opportunity structures, your promotion history. Those kind of things will call you to the carpet, as we say, and they check you. And so somebody like, Ms. Sampson, we're going to go in and ask you for that kind of data. And so you could put yourself in an awkward position by making a statement that you're committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion without the history. And so I would say, rather than making a statement because you feel it's the right thing to do, join the movement for change right now and build up a track record. So the next time this incident happens, which it will in our country, trust me. We thought the protests were dying down late last week, and then we got the word about the situation in Atlanta, and they revved back up. And so, again, there's time to build a track record of involvement, but not leadership. It's premature for you to make a statement if you don't have the track record. I'll stop there.
All right, Christine, what about for you?
You know, it's interesting. Sometimes I feel like it almost feels like some of these organizations are pandering. Like everyone jumped on the same boat. And, you know, I'm getting these emails from both organizations and retail. We're with you. We understand, right? And it's like, do you really? You know, is this just going to be like the governor and all these other places? Is this going to turn into a day off for people? We're going to celebrate Juneteenth, right? And so is this going to be like MLK Day where you get a day off from work and you really don't do anything to push change? And so I think that companies should be really very careful about the messaging, right? Because I know there is this sort of feeling that, I don't know, Black people, we're easily swayed. Like we're easily swayed by the Democratic Party. Like you don't owe us anything. You can say, oh, we're sorry, and then move on. And I think that we have to come to a moment where we're sorry, and then what? And you have to correct the behavior. Whatever that looks like within institutions, within retail, don't put out a message and then have a 30% off sale in honor of, you know, your social justice. And this is what it feels like. So I'm taking a very like wait and see attitude, right?
All right, thank you, Christine. Lorena, what about you?
Christine and Glenn, you both made some very valid points, and I agree. You know, I didn't think that far into it. I was thinking more on the municipality side, but I definitely agree with what you both said. For me, speaking more so for the cities, the local cities and government, one, I think that statements should come out as long as they come from the heart and a true place. And it's part of what your mission or your vision is for your community as well. So for instance, for Ferndale, we definitely, like I mentioned earlier, pride ourselves on being diverse and inclusion and being in equity throughout, you know, everything that we do, especially for our staff. And so with that, I expect for them to uphold that and to put out a statement to not just because that's what they say, but because that's what they mean, and to show the staff, you know, that you really do care, and we're standing by you because this is what we do and we believe in it. And they've shown some receipts as well, which I think was very heartfelt and meant a lot to me and my staff. We created a declaration of anti-racism that was approved by our city council during the last meeting. In addition, some other things are being done, are in the works as well. We got a statement directly from our city manager. And I think, you know, silence is sometimes considered acceptance. And so I would have been a little disappointed if our city, especially with the platform that we stand on, if they were silent and didn't say anything, when our culture is all about being inclusive and being in equity.
I'd like to also point out that for the city of Ferndale, Lorena is the only director of color, and she is also a woman. So she's blazing the trail in Ferndale, and it's a city where, you know, we are the minority. You know, it is a suburban city that is thriving, that is inclusive, and is very open in their ideals, and very accepting. So I would like to say that we have been blessed to work in such a community that that is so forthright and inclusive.
And not only have we gotten the support through our city council and the city as a whole through the statements and the proclamations, but the residents have been very supportive as well. We have several Facebook pages, and I know Lisa's been seeing it as well as myself. And if something came across that that was unfavorable with what's going on with the movement, then you had the residents shutting it down. Like we didn't even have to really say anything, and that means a lot as well.
You know, just to piggyback off of that, you know, I would like to know, how do we create community through people, parks, and programs when safety is a large concern, and there's several videos circulating of officers in uniform torturing and basically, you know, murdering people of color? What can we do to promote community collaborations through recreation when trust is basically fractured? Lakita, I'll start off with you with that one.
I think that it's important to establish real relationships. I had a situation where one of my facilities is in the middle of two apartment complexes. And we have a baseball association that uses the field. And they want me to put fences up to block the children that don't participate in their sport. And I was amazed that you would say that out loud, that you need to put a fence up because they curse too much, or, you know, they're not respecting the space. And I said, well, this is also their space. What have you done as a community league to make baseball appealing to this particular group of young people? So as parks and recreation professionals and as professionals of color, period, we have to speak up. You know, I could have said, oh, well, you know, we'll look into it. No, I'm not looking into it. We create bridges, not barriers. You know, I will do a street team with you, ma'am, if you want to walk through the neighborhood. But what we cannot do is allow individuals. And she said, well, I spoke to the mayor. I said, well, I spoke to the police chief. So I think that the conversation can't be one-sided with us talking to one or two people. We have to have a holistic approach to how we address our communities and how we communicate. And we need to see the police not just when something's wrong. So that's why I feel as parks and recreation professionals, how do we create recreational opportunities and community liaisons where we are actually doing things together instead of always responding? Can we be proactive? But is that actually genuine? So that's what I have to say about that. And I have one question that I want to ask you all, because I'm getting it. When your white friends ask you, what can I do to help?
Oh, that's one of my questions.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that I got some feedback, because what do you say? So anyway, to go back to what I was sharing, it's important in order to create safe spaces. These stakeholders have to seriously want to create safe spaces and commit their resources to those safe spaces and really support the community, the haves and the have-nots. And I think oftentimes we don't have the resources, so then you have the issues.
Well, I would like to go right into that question, segue right into that one, Lakita, that you gave. When your white friends or constituents or whoever, and I've gotten that question several times when they've asked, what can I do to help? Glenn, we're gonna start off with you with that one. And I'm gonna ask each one of you this, so get your thinking caps on and get ready. If you need to, take notes. Come on, Glenn, you're in the hot seat.
Oh man. Well, you know, in your last question, you talked about community. And Dr. Martin Luther King talked about we have a choice, community or chaos. And which one do we choose? And we're at this point right now where we do have a lot of white brothers and sisters who want to help. That process starts with learning about people who are different than you, really making yourself available to not only listen, but to learn. And that comes from a willingness to get out of your safe zone. And that safe zone means that if you really want to know about me, meet me in my environment. And then you understand the dynamics of me. Most people will look at me and say African-American male, and maybe they label me as successful, but there's different parts of me too. I got a family member that's strung out on drugs, and so some days I'm, leaving the university looking for her, hoping to God that, she's not somewhere on a city street dead. My colleagues don't know that side of me. You know, they just think it's a guy with a degree who makes things happen in the work environment. All those dynamics play into, you know, the stress and the trauma. We talk about PTSD for military people. If we're living in a militarized environment in these neighborhoods, policed by military units, then we have PTSD. You know, and you talk about a police officer pulling up behind me, you know, again, multiple degrees, you know, vice president of a university, you know, 26 departments reporting to me, but I still perspire when a police officer pulls up behind me. And I'm 57 years of age. And that behavior started when I started driving, when my mother gave me the instructions on what you need to do if you're ever stopped by an officer. And so if you really want to build that kind of community, you have to be willing to get out of your safe zone, you know, and be challenged by our different lifestyle and the challenges that we face, because in our community, we're not individualized. And so Lorena, you know, as this broader audience, Christine has this broader audience, that when you're not practicing law, there's other people that we have to take care of, you know, mentally, spiritually, financially. We share that burden in our community. And so I'll stop right there. But it's that willingness to get outside that comfort zone and expose yourself to what our life really is like. And then you'll understand the stress that we live under every day. As an African-American male, I put on the suit and tie, but still, when I go to the store, you know, it seems like maybe 40% of the time, you know, there's somebody peeking around the corner to see if I'm going to steal something. And I probably make more than anybody in the store, you know, multiple people in the store, all the people in the store, you know, but that's what we face. That's our reality. I'll stop there.
So Glenn, what you're saying, lunch is on you when we get out of, when I get back out in the world, right? Hey, nice laugh, nice laugh.
No comment.
Hey, I'm eating less nowadays. I'm eating less. You can give me something off the light menu. All right, Freda, what is your advice when you're asked by your constituents what can they do to help during this time, to understand?
Yeah, you know, and I think we'll all probably have overlapping answers, but first and foremost, step up and stand up. That is the initial action that they can do. But beyond that, if you wrap it around this idea of allyship, if you want to be an ally, if you want to be in a space of support and in a space of value, where it's not just lip service, then it means that there's some things that you have to do. One is that you have got to utilize your resources and engage your sphere of influence to go deeper, both in their self-awareness and self-reflection, but they also have to understand that in the construct of our educational system, the African-American narrative has not been profoundly woven into the story. So that means that they also have to do some homework. They have to understand the history. They have to understand by which the journey has occurred and how we are finding ourselves in this contemporary space, that it's not an anomaly. It happened because things have happened. And so the greater awareness you have around that, the more thoughtful you can be in the language that you use when you're engaging others. What does not work for some of us, certainly for me, is I appreciate if you go out and protest, but if you're picking up a sign and then you're putting that sign down and you're behaving the same way you behaved 6 months ago, then do me a favor, don't pick up the sign. Authentic engagement, authentic action. Allyship is an action word. It is not a passive word, which means that you have got to do self-work. You've got to use your resources. You have been benefited by the systems of privilege. And you need to utilize your privilege to create a space in this country, in these communities, in these neighborhoods, in these institutions that are establishing greater equity. It is a big question, And so when my white colleagues, my white neighbors, when they come to me and they ask me those things, don't be ready for an answer. I don't need you to hold my hand. I need you, to the point that Mr. Mcintosh has spoken to it. I need you to be compassionate and thoughtful. I don't need you to come to me and be weepy about it. I need you to roll up your sleeves and do something about it.
Thank you, Freda. Stacy, I'd like to pose the same question to you.
Yeah, so coming from my perspective, I would, I guess, say to a white person asking me that, I would tell them to ask questions, and to just find out as much about, you know, our race as they can. You know, look, go to the history book, you know, search your resources, and make a stand. Speak up. You know, if they feel uncomfortable or feel a certain way about something, to not be afraid to approach others and ask, you know, why do we feel the ways that we feel? You know, ask us about our experiences, our stories, and hopefully, you know, our answers can give them, you know, some type of feedback and just a means to self-diagnose, you know, kind of like what's going on and what's being taken place, you know, before they can take any action or be active in the communities or however they present themselves. They need to know information, knowledge. You know, it's not a joke. Knowledge is power. And if they're willing to listen, we should be that voice, you know, and be able to give it to them. I would also suggest, you know, for other races to, I guess, speak if they have kids or younger people in their lives, to speak to them and give history of why, you know, Blacks have been treated the way Blacks have been treated, why Blacks are oppressed, why are these things happening to Blacks? Because a lot of, you know, younger adults or, you know, little kids, you know, racism is a choice. It's a decision, and it's usually taught, because if you look at different videos, you know, you go on Facebook and YouTube, you see these little videos of little boys and girls, little Black boys, little white boys, you know, they're hugging and playing together because they don't know any other. That's all they know. They don't see color. I know we have a question, I believe, do we see color? But as kids, you know, you're pure, you know, you're innocent, you don't see color. So as you grow older, if you grow up and all of a sudden, you don't all of a sudden start not liking a person because their, you know, skin is darker than yours. That's crazy. It's a choice. So I would suggest implementing and teaching these ideals at a younger age in families and homes, and hoping that, you know, the word will get spread out about, you know, proper etiquette, equality, diversity, all these different things that we talk about, and it being meaningful and moving forward for change and progress.
All right. You know, just to kind of segue off of what Stacy just said, one of the questions that I sent to him was about the statement made to them by our white counterparts, I don't see color. And I said that, and I don't expect you guys to answer the way that I'm going to answer, but when that statement was said to me previously, I had no rebuttal for it. I said nothing to it. But as time went on and with what's going on, I had an issue with that. I had an issue with them saying to me, I don't see color. And going back to that moment that I was having when I was reminded about the Malice Green thing and about the police brutality and everything, and all my emotions were all stirred up. And I was angry. I was angry. I was upset. I mean, I'm not saying I was ready to go out and loot and burn anything down, but I was truly, truly, deeply saddened and hurt, to the point where I basically, shut down for the day. And it was during that time where, I heard that statement, and it stirred up a lot of feelings in me about I don't see color. And I made the statement. I said, please don't say that to me, that you don't see color, because to me you dismiss my you dismiss my existence, the existence of my melanin, to comfort you, and you're disparaging my community. And that's how I felt. Like, you dismiss, you have to see my color. You have to see. Don't say that you don't see me, because to see my color means you see me. And to me, I'm a beautiful, strong Black woman. And that is how I felt about that statement, about saying I don't see color. So today I would like to ask, what is your reaction when your white counterparts say to you, "Oh, Christine, I don't see color"?
Okay, so I think that if we're honest, we acknowledge like everybody sees color, right? When you and people see color, they see gender, they see young versus old, and so I think that has been like this myth that has been perpetuated, in that if I say I'm neutral, right? I'm neutral, then that means I'm not against you, but I'm not in support of you, right? And so I think the change is that if you see color and you recognize that just by virtue of my color, that I'm at a deficit in this world, not personally or just any individual, but the outside world has put me at a deficit. And so think about this. I said, like, okay, so Colin Kaepernick, he kneeled and everybody was up in arms, right? But if people truly understood and could see him and could see color and understand what it was about, they would have been kneeling with him, right? But because they were neutral, they're like, and some people were against them. So I mean, I agree with you. I think that we have to come to a place that is tough, because it's easier if you're neutral. Like, because that means you don't have to check that boss who is making racial slurs, right? You don't have to check your friends, when they say, "Hey, look who's moving in the neighborhood," right? So I think that you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Lorena, what's your feelings towards the statement, "I don't see color"?
I agree with Christine. I mean, everybody does see color. And it's important that it, like you mentioned, that people understand what we've been through, what we've gone through. I think sometimes, and that statement is kind of 50-50 with me, because I try to see what people mean behind it, and everybody, it may mean something different. So some people, it just may mean, I don't see color. I have friends, I want a white friend. It doesn't matter to me as long as you're a good friend, type of thing. But then, at the same time, it's okay to be not to see color, but do you believe in and treat everybody equally? And think about inequalities in that, you know what I mean? So you can't just say I don't see color for some, and in the school systems are equal, you know what I mean? And then the rights aren't equal, where you have certain people, of course, being affected by our emergency responders and others not, and judgment. So it's like, I get what you're trying to say sometimes, where you love all people and everybody is the same no matter who they are, but not in every circumstance. So you just have to, and that's where I guess where that 50-50 line is for me. Sorry, that's my son's knee. So it's every circumstance is not the same, and you have to see color.
Freda, I'd like to get your take on that statement.
Yeah, so I hear that statement a lot. When I go in and do learning sessions with different organizations, and I'm talking to their workforce, I'm talking to their leadership, and people sometimes feel uncomfortable but want to feel as if they have this responsibility to validate myself, because often I go into a space where I'm doing some training and I'm the only African American in the room. And so one of the things that I hear as people are explaining to me that you know, they don't see color, everybody is the same to them, and then it's often followed with, and I have Black friends. So, you know I'm good. So here's the thing for me, because everyone that has spoken to it, you're absolutely on point. Of course you see color, right? And let me be clear, I want you to see my color. I want you to see every bit of my brown skin and my gray hair, because all of that is narrated in my lived experience. My color matters, right? So please see it. But I understand that it is often done because people are trying to figure out a way to minimize differences so that they can uplift our similarities. Now, I'm not making excuses for it, but when we don't think about these issues because we either don't have to or we haven't taken the time to, then a quick and easy way to respond to a person of color, if we are a white American, and we feel like we are obligated to make us feel safe in a particular space, is to validate our existence by saying that basically I don't see your existence, right? So the very discourse that is occurring is contradictory. But the intent is not always negative, to your point. The intent is not always to create harm. It is sometimes simply to try to create a platform that they think may seem fair. The underlying aspect of what is being said is white is standard. Anything that's not white is not standard. So if I don't see color, then I see you as white. Fundamentally, that is problematic. Let me ask, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, everyone can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, my internet is starting to act up. So when I hear that phrase, I don't, you can still hear me? Okay.
Yes.
When I hear I don't see color, I simply just provide some information that I want you to see my color. You not seeing my color is harmful. You seeing my color is important.
Thank you, Freda. Yeah, you're starting to get a cool little look about you there. You're fading in and out a little bit, but you're still with us. Thank you. Can you hear me, Freda? Oh, we may be losing Freda, everybody, but we'll make sure and try to take care of that. All right. Another thing I wanted to touch on too is the protests. There have been a lot of protests in every community, and Parks and Rec really has been in the middle of a lot of it. A lot of our departments have had protests at our parks and everything. We've had to facilitate these things. To my Park and Rec professionals, how can departments best respond to protests happening in their parks or on department property? Lakita, I'll ask you that one first.
Well, the first thing for us, of course, is looking at whatever local demonstration codes are in our communities to ensure that the individuals that are having the demonstrations know what the laws are. Because I found that in my past position back in Virginia, that's how people would get in trouble. They didn't know. And so people wouldn't tell them how to get the proper documentation and paperwork to ensure that they are creating a safe environment. So I think that's where you start off with, is making sure that we're helping to educate those individuals that are looking to utilize our facilities in the best way that we can. I think that second too, it is we treat it as we do all of our events. We have ways to make sure that we have the restrooms, that we have, don't treat it any differently because it is a protest or demonstration, if that makes any sense to you. Let's not go negative. Like, oh my gosh, they're coming into my park, they're going to tear my park to pieces. How do we make sure that we assist them in this process? Because that's what I do love about America, the right of free speech. So I think that as Parks and Rec professionals, we need to be a conduit to ensure that our citizens are educated on the processes and that we provide them with the support that they need so that it's a safe and healthy environment. Because what you don't want to do is come off as the bureaucracy that we don't want you to do it. So I think that's important.
All right, Lorena, let me get your take on that.
Yeah, I agree with Lakita as well. And just to add on to that, in addition to just following the proper process and protocols, but also partnering, preparing, and anticipating. And so we definitely want to, like you mentioned, partner with them. You know, I know with Ferndale, we've had several protests in our parks where we allowed them to use it. The police were right there. They were helping, you know, it move along smoothly. It was more of working together as opposed to as on the defense. And of course, you want to prepare for the event and then anticipate some of the unknowns. And let's be honest, there's a lot of groups out here that their main objective is to come and make these rallies negative and you know, just go awry. So we want to anticipate that people with agendas that may also make it turn into something worse, and then focus on what the messaging is too, keeping it positive. Again, with police and the city working with the people who are demonstrating or orchestrating the rallies, you know, showing that we have the messaging on our end is a positive, it's a positive thing, and we want a positive outcome, and we want to work together.
Lorena, you said something, I wrote it down. You said partnering, preparing, and what was that last thing?
Anticipating.
All right. Lakita's taking notes. She's so studious. All right. Another thing that I wanted to make sure that we touched on today as well is the Black Lives Matter movement, which has been the catalyst for a lot of the protests in our communities. And a lot of things, a lot of rhetoric that we get back is that no, all lives matter. But my personal response to that is usually that we're saying that Black Lives Matter. We never said only Black Lives Matter. We know all lives matter. We just need your help with making sure that everyone knows that Black lives are in danger. So it's talking about protesting and things like that in our parks. You know, beyond public protests, what are some other key ways that individuals can better educate themselves about racism and privilege? I'm going to start that off with Glenn. Glenn, can you answer that one for me? Yeah, I got you.
You know, it's tough because when we talk about Black Lives Matter and why do Black Lives Matter and why is it important to acknowledge this? Really, because as a country, we never acknowledged that Black Lives Matter. You look at that document that we always refer to called the Constitution of the United States. When was that written? We were slaves. We weren't part of that. So when we talk about inclusion in that picture, we weren't included. And so we never said as a country, Black Lives Matter. And so it's a question mark. Does Black Lives Matter? Do Black Lives matter? And so everybody's wondering that right now. And by the actions of our country, we have a lot of reservations and doubts about that. When we look at all the disparities across our country that have gone on for hundreds of years, we wonder. And remember, we came here as property, plain property. with the idea that if I own you, I can do anything I want to. I can sell you, I can sell your kids, I can whip you, I can kill you. You know, and so with that, we're still asking the question, do Black lives matter? And so now we have the obligation of answering that. And that answer is going to require action to follow our response. You know, and so are we ready for that? And so when we say all lives matter, well, it sounds good, but that means you're in a state of denial. And you're in denial about the power structure that exists in our country that has left African Americans at a point of being handicapped for so many years. And so I think with that denial, when you talk about, I don't see race, that's problematic for me. So I'm glad you didn't ask me that question, because I would have told you it was problematic for me, for the simple fact that when a person says, I don't see race, that means they're in denial. And then my question is, do they have the willingness to disrupt the power structure in our institutions across the United States? And so that response that, you know, I oftentimes hear, you know, I don't see color. At that point, that liberal who usually says it poses some serious questions for me about that individual. And I wonder, can they really be an ally if they're not willing to give up some of their power? All this is a tug of war, you know, and people see diversity, equity, and inclusion as, do I have to give up something? For you to have equality, you know, to be considered equal, what do I have to give up? You know, and most people at the end of the day don't want to give up. And so Christine, you know, wants to be that attorney general, but that means I've got to remove a familiar face, you know, and I'm not sure when Christine becomes that attorney general, if she's gonna be a little bit biased towards darker skinned people. And so be careful who we let in the door. Has always been the banner of America. And so some of us have slipped through the door for different reasons. But again, I'm not sure, you know, Black Lives Matter across our country. And I'm waiting for that statement. Maybe we need to go back and revisit the Constitution. So I'll stop there.
All right, Stacy, I would like to get your view on that.
Could you repeat what the question was? I'm sorry.
Well, I would just like to get your take on Black Lives Matter, period.
Black Lives Matter. Yeah, Glenn had a lot of good points on the topic. In my opinion, of course, Black Lives Matter. All human lives matter. It's unfortunate that, you know, the color of our skin dictates, you know, sometimes whether we get advantages or disadvantages in this life. But as far as just Black Lives Matters, you know, growing up in my household, my parents instilled in me, you know, strength and confidence and all these different things. And it wasn't even necessarily because I was Black. Of course, you know, we know the color of our skins and where we come from and stuff like that. But just honing in on just, you know, different things like that, being respectful, being confident, you know, being powerful, being equal. These things have been engraved in me as a kid and as a young adult. So then going out into the world, all I have on my brain is that I matter, that I can make a difference, that I can succeed and be in these same powerful positions as other white and other, you know, races are. And I think if we can, you know, somehow implement that, you know, in our younger generations and moving forward, I think it'll do some good in this community and on this earth. And it's just, it's a shame because you look at, for instance, the establishment Starbucks, where they at first came out with the statement of, like, I guess their workers, they didn't want to allow them to wear a Black Lives Matter shirt. And then, in a day, they flipped the script and said, okay, no, now you can wear it. And it's like, no, you made your voice, you made your opinion on it. So now why are you changing? Why are you, deciding to go left with it? But it's like, as we said in the past, people, try to confuse us, try to get us, to jump on the bandwagon with saying just different things. And we just have to be strong in our faith. We got to be, strong in our history and stick with it. And if we, just unite together, come together, and we all be on one accord, I think we can promote social change and implement the value that we have, on this earth. I kind of went left and right with my answer, but all of that, just being confident in who you are and knowing that you do matter.
All right, we have a question from the audience, and I'm going to direct this one to Christine because it's in line with some things that she said earlier. So listen close, Christine. Get close and listen here. This is for you. And I'm gonna tap into some of you guys too. What are your feelings about Black History Month? Do you think that this observance is helpful or important? Or is limiting the acknowledgement of the important contributions of Black Americans to 1 month considered pandering behavior?
No, well, let me just say it like this. I think that it's important to carve out time and a space where individuals, if they choose to, focus on our heritage, right? But that does not mean just because, you may celebrate Valentine's Day, that doesn't mean you're mean to your wife every other day of the week, right? Or the month, or your spouse or significant other. So I think it's important for people to recognize that this is something that is owed to our community. And when I say owed, celebration of Black History Month is a recognition of our contributions, right? And it's our time to celebrate. That's not necessarily, when I spoke about pandering, there is always the sort of fear that somebody will monetize a movement. They've been doing this for the entire history of the country, right? Taking something that means one thing and profiting off of it, right? And so when I say that, I think we just have to be very careful as to individuals' intentions. And I think that probably answers the question.
Thank you, Christine. I have another question. This one I'm going to pose to Freda first, and then I'm going to ask somebody else. Pertaining to the statements on companies' response to Black Lives Matter, how can we hold them accountable? What questions should we ask if we're interviewing for a job? What sort of practices should I be looking out for?
So I just want to make sure I heard the question, Lisa. So pertaining to Black Lives Matter, how, if a company makes a statement, how should we hold them accountable?
Yes.
Was that the first part? Okay, let me answer that.
That's the first part.
Okay. So when we spoke about this a few minutes ago, and we were talking about the different organizations or companies issuing these statements around the untimely, unfortunate, and tragic passing of George Floyd, and so many others who are nameless to us. What indeed should they do? Should they speak to it, particularly if they don't have a history? So here's my answer to that. Whether a company has a robust diversity, equity, inclusion program, or has done some meaningful work around creating equity within their culture, or whether a company is just waking up, if they put out a statement, if they articulate a support in this game-changing moment, this tipping point moment, then the next step is accountability. And we, as African Americans, people of color, Black and brown bodies, have a lot of power. We have a lot more power than we often acknowledge, particularly in terms of our capacity to buy. And so when companies put out a declaration, make a statement, or provide support, which of course, unequivocally, they should do. But if they're new to the game, or if they're entering the game gingerly, or if they're ramping up to something far more robust, wherever they enter this narrative, wherever they enter this conversation, we hold them accountable for the next level of commitment towards what that means. That this is not a time in history where lip service is going to work. This is a time in history where you need to be prepared to back your words with your actions. And so our responsibility is to hold companies accountable by managing our dollars, by being aware of our power. We spend billions of dollars a year. I've had to change my spending habits with certain companies because of how they have chosen to spend their money in terms of supporting things that were contrary to my values. Those are the kinds of things that we can do to help them be accountable, because that moves the continuum forward. And everybody has an opportunity to become their better selves. Now, as it pertains to the second part of the question, it was around interviewing.
Yes, I guess in the context of their question, you know, if you're interviewing for a company or a job or whatever, I'm sorry, other questions are coming in at the same time. Oh my goodness. How can we hold them accountable? What sort of practices should I be looking out for, both positive, on the positive side and the negative side? So in other words, you don't want to step into an environment that is not diverse, that is not welcoming of diversity or inclusion.
I think in part the question was answered in the question. You asked questions. What is this company? What does this company represent? One of the things that I love about our young people is that they are changing the course of how corporations do business. There is a greater degree of social engagement and consciousness with our young people, and they're coming into these corporations and they're saying that what my values are is where, you know, are we seeing equitable behavior in policy within the institution? Am I seeing a diverse population? Are we engaging in self-care? Young people are coming to the table in that interviewing process and saying, what can you do for me? And I think that they're doing it in a way that's more holistic and inclusive than we have done in other generations. And there's a whole reason for that shift. But I think that's exactly how we continue to change the paradigm of these institutions. And I know it's working because I've been on the inside of those institutions. And one of the things that we grappled with, or they grappled with, was how do we make this adjustment? How do we maintain our ability to be nimble? Because we have a whole new generation of folk coming in with a different expectation and a different set of demands, and we are going to have to meet our needs to it. So answering that question is just speak to it. What are you doing around diversity? What are you doing around equity? Do you have employee resource networks? What's available to make sure that I feel safe and that I have a culture that lives and supports me?
Thank you. Glenn, I would like to also get your take on that.
Well, I thought Ms. Sampson handled it very well. You know, I'm a big, you know, Missouri type of guy, so show me. When you tell me what you're about, well, you know, it's a question mark. But when you show me, then I believe you. And so when I say that, when you're interviewing, you look at the C-suite. You know, you don't have to go deep into the organization. You look at the C-suite, which is the penthouse, and you find out who's there. You know, is that corporate leaders' cabinet diverse? If it's not diverse, that's problematic. Now, if somebody just exits, show me your C-suite membership for the last 3 to 5 years. And that speaks volume as to how diversity, equity, inclusion is valued. We're in 2020. If diversity is not reflected in the C-suite of an organization, that's a problem, you know. And if it hasn't existed historically in an organization, that's a problem, you know. And so I get paid, you know, quite well going out and working with organizations and companies to write their diversity statements and their diversity plan. But I always leave them with, this is an actionable document. It only works if you work it. And so when you're interviewing, make sure you look at the highest level of the organization, because that's where change is driven from. It's not from the bottom up, it's from the top down, because that's where the power lies and the purse strings are held. And so the problem that we have in most organizations is when you look at them, it's like most university structures. The bulk of the people usually work custodial positions, kitchen positions. And so it's nothing for me to go to a major event on a college campus, and I'm one of the few dark-skinned people at that event. But then I look around and say, who's serving us? And it's people that look like me. You know, and we do the wink and nod thing. But I always, you know that I'm blessed, but I'm also aware that I'm there to create change. And so I better not get comfortable. I better stay uncomfortable.
Thank you, Glenn. One question I'd like to pose to everyone is, how can an organization such as Imparts be more inclusive to people of color and create a more diverse and inclusive environment in recreation? Lorena, I'm going to start off with you.
That's a great question. I think, of course, it's a great start with where you're at right now, Lisa, with the DEI Imparts group that you're part of. I think on a national level, like Lakita explained, we have EMS, which is the Ethnic Minority Society, which is part of National Parks and Recreation Association. And so I think those are good starts with that. I think I will say, when I attend meetings and when I attend the conferences, like Lisa mentioned earlier, we are a minority and far and few in between. So I'm just trying to think out loud now, and I think it's something that we can definitely work towards together to try to figure that out. But maybe it is having a different group or a subgroup of what Lisa already has established for minorities. And then with that, when we have our conferences and different groups and meetings, maybe there's some type of outreach that happens there, or some type of meeting. Of course, it'd be open to everyone, but that's specific for that group of people to feel included. Yeah, I think that would be a start. That would be a start. And I don't have the answer for that right now, but I think the answer is to just start the conversation and get input from others who feel that there is a need to be more diverse in this effort, and go from there.
Lakita, I'd like to get your take on that as well.
Definitely following up with what Lorena said, I agree. You know, you look at the national associations. We're still trying to figure this out ourselves. You know, this organization, EMS, has been in fruition since 1971, and we're still trying to figure out how can we do a better job. So we have started our strategic planning, and but we need to engage more people. But what I also have to say is that I was 26 when I first became director, and I was the only African-American director. So you're looking at a 26-year-old. No one gave me a book to be a director, and I had to figure it out. So I said that to say, even when I go to conference, I'm coming into the room that we're usually not in. It's okay. I think a lot of times we peep in the door and we look through the window, we're like, well, none of us are in there, so I'm not going to go. Those are the rooms I go in because I'm comfortable with who I am and what I'm bringing to the table. And if I come through that door, then Lisa, I can turn around and bring you through that door so that we cannot create change if we stay comfortable. We have to be uncomfortable even in our own field. So I share that to say, for young professionals that are on this call, that are listening, you can go into those rooms. Don't let that closed door make you feel that you don't belong. And once you go in that room, then you have a responsibility. And it bothers me because some of us get places, Mr. Mcintosh, and we forget to pull somebody else. And so then you still have that same one person, Christine, doing the same thing. I'm on 8 different committees because I haven't shared this opportunity. So I think that we need to do a better job as leaders of, 1, sharing opportunities, and then 2, as new leaders or new professionals in whatever field you're in, is walking in through those doors that you usually don't see us in.
Thank you. Thank you. Christine, I'd also like to pose that question to you, as far as in your field, how can we be more inclusive, and create a more diverse environment?
And so when you say a diverse environment, you mean access to parks and, okay. So yes. When I was growing up as a young girl on the west side of Detroit, going to a Michigan park was an outing. If you wanted to go to any of the metro parks, Kensington, Metro Parkway, that felt like a 2-hour trip, right? Get everything in the car, get everybody there. As an adult, I drive to these parks all the time, but guess what? I don't see a lot of Black and brown people out there because the very first thing, and I know there are parks in this city, but some of the most beautiful parks off the water, trails, are the metro parks, right? And they tend to be further out from urban areas, right? And so how do I know about these things? How do I get there? So early on in the conversation, we talked about resources. So we have to raise the resources and make it transportation or events that are designed exclusively to engage people in other communities. And then the other thing I would say is I grew up as a camp counselor, so swimming in lakes and things like that. So for me, that experience, I was usually the one and only Black girl, right, at Camp Nisakoni, right? And so, but that said, I would always, those were some of the best experiences, like hiking through pictured rocks and things like that. And I know that I have a lot of friends who ain't into that. They're not getting in the water. They're not going hiking. So that also means seeing the color and seeing how we like to engage, right? And it's no shade. I think people feel like if you do something and it is targeted at Black people or brown people, and you say like, oh, we have a great setup. You can host your family reunion here, right? Or you can do other things that traditionally, Black people like to do at parks because we do use them differently. And I think that you have to develop and understand that first. And that's the first start to, being inclusive and raising participation.
And recognizing those barriers as well for resources. Transportation, like we can have a great facility, a great building, but do we have transportation? How can we maximize so people can actually get to those facilities? And then everyone doesn't have that $35, $45, $50 registration fee. How do we partner with the private sector to ensure that our children that may not, because I was that kid, I was like you, Christine, my field trip, my vacations were local playgrounds and parks. We didn't have the money to go places. So how do we as professionals opening up opportunities by combining and working with the private sector to help get the resources for our young people. I just wanted to share that because you had a great story, but those are two things that I see here is transportation and the ability to actually afford some of our programs, even when they are cheap. But if you have 6 kids, that $35 is a little different. So I just wanted to share that part of inclusivity.
If I could chime in really quick, one of the things that we can't ignore as well is the stigma behind some of those parks. Because you have some people, oh, I'm not driving all the way out to Kensington because I know I'm gonna get pulled over. Or I'm not gonna have a picnic there because if my music is a little too loud, I'm gonna be harassed by the police. So those are some of the things that I think need to be worked on as well.
Yes. All right, guys, we're getting close to the end of our session. Can you believe it? It's almost been 2 hours. But before we do that, I really want to personally thank each and every one of you. We lost Stacy. Wi-Fi and the internet is not dependable nowadays, but it is our new normal. And I want to thank you all for giving of your time, your talents, and your truth, because that is what's important right now, is to share our truth. And to be transparent right now. Before we go any further, I would like for each one of you to give out your contact information if you would like to be contacted and anything like that. And you know, I'm a firm believer on networking. And the only way that we are going to get our message out and become stronger is if we network together. So please, Glenn Mcintosh, can you start us off?
Yeah, it's probably, you know, I get so many emails, it's probably better just to call me or text me. So I'm not afraid to give out my number. It's 313-587-5331. And so I may not pick up, but if you leave me a text, I respond all the time, even when I'm in meetings. So it's just been a pleasure to be on this panel with so many talented people, with your voices, you know, screaming out loud. The change is in the air, and this is our moment of opportunity. And so the obstacle really is the opportunity, and we have to keep reminding ourselves of that the obstacle is the opportunity, and we press forward in that reality, and we manifest what we want to see, which is equality. So thanks for having me today.
Lorena, I'll make sure and not forget you this time, boss lady. Remember that in my next evaluation, please.
It's coming up. No, I'm kidding. Be reached. Email is best for me because I get telemarketers all the time, so I don't answer my phone that much. But my email is lwheeler, so that's LWHEELER at ferndalemi.gov, lwheeler@ferndalemi.gov. And thank you again for having me, Lisa. I think you did an awesome job putting the panel together and leading this webinar. I think everybody had valid points. I know it's a lot of takeaways that I have for myself. And just in general, the Black Lives Matter movement is very empowering right now, especially what the youth are doing and the changes that that are being made and we foresee that's going to be made permanently. However, the reason why we have to do it is what saddens me the most. But I'm just glad that we're all moving into the right direction. And thank you.
All right, Christine, you're up next.
So it's my first and last name at gmail.com, Christine Longstreet at gmail.com. Prefer emails like Lorena. And I thank you. This was a very interesting and compelling conversation. And I think that we just need to keep talking, keep the conversation going. Because one of the things when the protest started, I said, oh, okay, so, you know, how long will this last, right? Because sometimes things have a tendency to die down. And so I am encouraged, and I think that we're seeing real change, sustainable change, because we're seeing a shift in attitudes and perception. Thank you.
I thank you, Christine, for using the word shift. That's our word for the day. You get a gold star for that. Thank you. And I get lunch from Glenn, don't forget. All right, Freda, you're up next.
So Lisa, thank you for this extraordinary moment, this moment in history where I feel like I've met brand new colleagues on today. And so I'm grateful to be on such a significant panel. I'm humbled by it. I can be reached, let me give you a few things. Michigan Roundtable for Diversity and Inclusion. It's an 80-year-old organization around human rights. This is the work that this organization has been doing since its very inception. The website is miroundtable.org. I can also be reached, and their phone number, or our phone number, is 313-870-1500, 313-870-1500, and my email address is my full name, FredaGSampson@gmail.com. We are at a tipping point in this country, and I agree that this moment is unlike others. I think we're on our way somewhere, and I am glad to be on that journey and glad to be in that march. So to you, Lisa, and to everyone on the panel, thank you for this privilege.
Thank you, Freda. Lakita, you're up next.
I definitely feel so special. Like, you guys are some of the smartest people I've been on calls with for the last 12 weeks that we've been out for Corona, COVID-19. But in all due honesty, this has been a very, very important dialogue that I have taken some good notes that I want to be able to share, not only in my groups, but even with our board for EMS. So you can contact me at Lakita, that's LAKITA, at rcrc.state.sc.us. I have not gotten all this worked out yet. We're going to make that shorter eventually. I just thank you again for allowing me to come on this call to provide some input. I encourage you all that are interested in pushing parks and recreation and diversity through our profession, as well as in our communities, to visit the website for EMS, which is www.nrpems.org. Thank you.
Lakita, I'd like you also to expound on the fact that EMS is not just for people of color. It is for all those that want to join the organization. Please speak on that.
Yes, for all individuals that are interested in ensuring equity in recreation, minorities and non-minorities. It takes all of us at the table in order, because there are some tables that we can't even get to unless somebody else open the door for us to get there. So to try to just say that it's just one way, it's just all of us, no. We need everybody. Very inexpensive membership, $35 a year, and we're doing some great things, and I agree with Ms. Sampson. I feel like 2020, we all take this momentum, including EMS, and let's see what real change we can make.
All right, Stacey, you were out the loop for a second. Thank you for coming back. What we're doing is we're just wrapping up a little bit, and I'd like you to make sure that you share your information and everything about your company and email contact information and just how everything went today.
Okay, yep. You could get a hold of me or in contact with me via email. My email is slthomas@fullcourt11.com. And just, I'm honored and humbled to be a part of this webinar. I've learned so much myself, just, listening and taking everything that has been said by all of the panelists. You guys are awesome. You provided a lot of insight and information. Thank you, Lisa, for asking me to be a part of such a great panel and a great discussion. I know that, we can't change everything at once, all at one time, but if we continue to take the appropriate steps, we can make a lasting impact for change. And that's something I'm looking forward to. And I, again, just thank you for allowing me to be a part of today's webinar.
So since Stacey won't promote her own self, remember, if you're running the league and you need some quality officials, I have hired this woman and her officials and her training. She actually did a training for my teenagers. I decided I wanted teenagers to officiate my leagues going forward. And they officiate my youth basketball as well as my youth soccer is totally officiated by youth. And she trained my youth officials who have gone on to become certified and are now some of them in college and actually officiating college games, well, not college games, high school games, because they're in college. So, and it was all because this woman right here wanted to partner with me and do it at such a nominal fee that my poor little rec budget could afford it. I appreciate you. I appreciate each one of you.
Appreciate
it. No problem. If anybody got anything out of this, I hope that you got some key points that a few of our panelists said, which is one of my favorite was change requires resources.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are the resources. We are the change. I implore you to be those two to someone. If you want to know how to help, those are two things that you can do to help the movement. Help facilitate change by being a resource, by engaging, by no longer sitting and being silent. And together we will facilitate a shift. Right now, I would like to turn it over to Clay Summers, who is Executive Director of Imparts, and get his final views.
Thanks, Lisa. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
So I just want to say a couple of things after sitting here for a couple of hours and listening to this. It's been one of the most empowering webinars that I've certainly been on in the last 2 months. I think it's something that our membership who were signed up for this received a great deal of takeaways in listening to your knowledge and how our agencies and our cities and townships and counties and our systems can embrace this shift. And I think Imparts has been on the cusp for a while. And when we made the shift to bringing Lisa on board as our DEI committee chair, I didn't realize what a rock star we were getting, and what she has brought to this association is we can't put a value on it. And to bring a panel with you folks on for our membership to be able to listen to and learn from is worth its weight in gold right now. And you know, we are striving to make change in our state as it is in our outdoor recreation spaces, to make them more equitable. And it's not easy. And we know that. We know the work's going to be hard and it's going to be a long road. But with folks like you and Miss Freda, it's always great to see you. If you didn't know, Freda did our facilitation of our board retreat last year. Got to know her very well, and just appreciate all the views that have been brought to the table. And I am just super proud to know a few of you personally, and to feel like I know some of you now that I've never met. And that's what you portrayed on screen, was an open, honest dialogue that made people feel like they could connect with you. And for that, I'm super appreciative. And you know, we'll all get through this together. Tough times, and it's certainly not a world that's very inviting right now. And hopefully, in our profession and in your professions, we can help facilitate this shift and continue this work. Lisa, we've got a lot of work to do, girl. You and I are going to be talking a lot coming up, so I hope you're ready.
I'm ready for the call.
So
all right,
thank you.
That's it for me. What about you, Clay?
No, I'm like Lakita. I took copious notes here and wrote down a lot of sayings and things that I'm going to use. You'll hear them come out. I thought it was fantastic. It's great to see smiling faces and a time where we can kind of just shoot things back and forth and get a better understanding of how we're feeling right now in this time. So I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for jumping on and giving our membership an opportunity to have this dialogue with you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Peace and blessings.
Great job, Lisa.
Yeah, Lisa.
Thank you. Great job, guys.
Thank you, Lisa.
Love you guys.
Everyone, take care.
Yeah, anytime.
All righty.
Bye.
Bye-bye.